Hi, this is Chi Chi,
I'm Chantel.
and we're here to talk about American Dirt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Um. Anyway, you're listening to the reality she prefers, and we never say that,
I
but
know.
I thought
I was
it's like
actually just thinking that.
fair for us to just be like, oh, that's the title of our podcast.
Yes, the Reality She Prefers podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome in the most sultry voice I can
I know.
summon.
So right now we're drinking Bodacious Red Bourbon Barrel, aged. Oh, it's not Bodacious Red. It is just Bodacious. I drink Bodacious Red.
It's the same brand.
But Bodacious Red is a different, it's a different drink. It's a different bottle.
Oh, yeah, it's a different bottle because it's a different wine. Yes, but it's the same brand.
Listen, anyway, this one is the aged red blend.
Yes, in a bourbon barrel.
Okay.
Yum, yum, yum.
It's really good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So you wanted me to summarize?
Yes, you're going to take the summary on this
American Dirt. Okay.
I got it.
This is a story about a woman and her son, I think he's 9-year-old son, who flee narco violence in Mexico and attempts to basically relocate to the U.S. However, in so doing, they're migrating on foot and crossing trains. And did you want to start with ratings, or do you want to leave that later?
I'll leave that till later. What do you
Okay.
think? We can start with what do you want to do? I don't care.
I can start with a rating. Okay, well, this was not really my cup of tea. I think I would rate it 2.5 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not very generous, but yeah.
That's okay. You don't have to be generous.
Okay.
It's not your cup of tea. It's not my... well, that's not true. I think I'm going to rate it like a 3, maybe a 3.5. I'm hovering between a 3 and a 3.5.
Okay.
I did enjoy the book. The story overall was gripping. However, I did feel that, and I've messaged you a few times being like, I feel like I've seen this movie on like Netflix, or I've seen this like I felt like it was a very
generic,
exactly, story. And the reason I still gave it a higher rating because I liked the storyline. I did. I really did like the storyline. I actually did like most of the violence.
Yes.
I did enjoy the struggle. Like, I enjoyed the story. We do have issues with the story, which we will talk about, but I overall, that's kind of why I did it. I'm going to keep it at a 3. 3.5 is too generous.
Okay. Yeah. And I, unlike you actually read the physical, and I listened to the audio.
I listened to the audio too.
Okay.
To kind of double time it, you know.
Well, you listened to it and you were like, I'm not doing it.
I didn't do it a lot. No.
I know. And I, like you said, that it would have been a better experience had I read the physical. So I'm keeping that in mind. But I gave it a 2 did I say 2 or 2.5? I
think so, 2.5.
Oh yeah. I gave it a 2.5 because, I did feel that the violence, in this book was rather gratuitous and in many ways graphic and unnecessary.
Yeah.
I also felt that not just generic, but it played on stereotypes about
that. I will agree with.
The situation in Mexico. So because it took a very complex sociopolitical context and basically flattened it.
That applied to all of Mexico. Like, every single Mexican was in danger of their life.
Right. Exactly.
Like, that's the norm,
right,
of people who are. That's kind of what it felt like, right? Is that what you mean? That like?
Oh no. I actually meant that like it took a very complicated situation.
Okay.
And it presented a very, like you said, generic, but like simplistic, very, like it boils it down to, stereotypes, for lack of a better word. I don't know how to express that further. I think that what's going on like, I think if you're going to write a story about narco violence, it needs to be, and you say this, you basically get at this by saying generic. I agree with you. I think that it needs to be, especially from a distant observer as she is. She's based here in, I think in the U.S.
Yeah, she is.
So if you're going to write about that, it needs to be not just thoroughly researched, because I do think that she did research the book, but I think it needs to not feel as if, I don't want to assume that, it's exploitative and that it exploits the story for gain, but it does feel like that. It feels like the story presents this for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, I get that. I viewed it as an entertainment piece.
Okay.
Right? Like I think like categorically it's, quote unquote historical fiction, but I didn't feel like it was really historical fiction. It was more just like just an entertainment piece.
Here's the thing though. I don't think that she means to, I don't think that if I was to say that the author has some intentions, I don't think the intention would be for this to be an entertainment.
No, I do not think that was her intention at all. I think that, again, like I said, this book was pure entertainment for me, which according to the author's note, I think she intended to do something else. She wanted to do something more substantial. Right. So, however, exactly what you said, I'm just looking at some notes here. I actually took notes on this one. It's such an exaggeration of Mexican life. And I mean, I'm not Mexican. I can't speak to that. But from my assumption of what Mexico is, this is not it, right? My assumption of Mexican life is not people who are trying to escape narcos on the daily, every single part. That's kind of what it seemed like, that she made it this, like you said, the stereotype that every single person potentially in Mexico is in fear of their life, trying to, escape. This was the common practice, right? Which I don't think so, which is a problematic issue, right? Of someone who, especially she got millions for this book.
So we're going to talk about
an issue as well.
Yeah,
there's so many issues here. I do find it. So before we talk about that, I do find that it's kind of scary that I'm getting ahead of myself in our conversation, but she had some major celebs who vouched for her, like Oprah, Stephen King, were really fueling the fire.
Was Stephen King vocal in his support for her?
I don't know if it was vocal, but it's on the book.
Okay, so
it's on the book.
That one, I'm just gonna. It's horrible, but a lot of times it's just. Sometimes they'd never even read the book.
Okay, that's still okay, fine, but it's still his name associated to a quote that puts this book on a pedestal as this piece of work from one white male to, okay, I don't know. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I think we were talking about something else.
No. I like that line of inquiry. She had a lot of support. There's some, the reception for this is really great. And any book that's, boasted on the Oprah stage or amplified, is gonna definitely make money, right? So
I'm not even talking from the money standpoint.
Yeah,
I just mean that it's perpetuating the stereotype, right? Because I think that this was one of the major issues that you and I discussed, was that it lacks this cultural knowledge and background to really express. I think this book could have been okay if she had played on more of what it was like being a Mexican, being in Mexico. But it was all about this escape. It was all about getting away from these narcos and
to get to the U.S.
Right? Like there was no cultural, let's let them in because of this. Like, okay, yes, it's a major issue. I agree. It is an issue in the state. I'm not in the U.S., but it's a major issue. But like, what did this do? Just perpetuate fear of what? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
No,
like,
I do. Absolutely. Yeah. And you raised really, really good, valid points. I agree that it's basically served no educational purpose. Even though I think that the aim is to provide some education about the context, except it just stoked a lot of fears. Sorry. Except it just stoked a lot of fears and like anxiety about like immigrants and the situation there. So it didn't really serve that purpose. And to respond to what you say about Oprah and the reception, it's not Oprah's not just like an American who's.
Do you know she's Oprah?
Like, no, she's somebody with a lot of capital, social and monetary capital, and what Oprah says goes.
Yeah, true.
So I think if I'm to build on what you're saying, the question would be like, do people with this social clout like Oprah and do readers in general have a ethical responsibility? And I think this is kind of what you're saying. Do they have an ethical responsibility to interrogate this sort of thing rather than just like,
I don't think so.
Feeling it and putting it on a pedestal, like you said.
I think there's a lot of people, just even with the ratings of this book, reviews of this book, the reception of this book, I want to say it was fairly, you said it's not educational, but I feel like it was educational for a lot of people. And like, oh, I had no idea that they would struggle this much. Like, to me, that seems unfathomable, that you wouldn't think that someone would struggle this much to get into the United States. Like, even as a Canadian, we would still have issues to get into the United States. Like, not these kind of issues, but like we have to cross a lot of T's and dot a lot of I's to get into the US. It's not simple. But I think that comes from, I don't know the word I'm looking for, maybe you can help me out here, from the like US centric view where they literally think that they're the only people on the planet. Did you know what like there's
US exceptionalism.
Is that what it is? Yeah. Okay, so that it comes from that. Like, I think that like this, maybe if we give her a little bit of credit, that's kind of what she was trying to break, you know, that it's not just about you. There are other people who are going through struggles and who want to come into this country. So and again, I'm not bashing her. I think that what she was trying to do was very there was a lot of courage in what she was trying to do. I think that it was a great attempt. I just really think that could have been a solid piece of work should she have maybe actually even spoke to more Mexican people or had that background. Like, if this was written by a Mexican, I think it might have shown that it's like not all of Mexico was like this, which I had a little bit of a problem with. I mean, again, I still really liked the story. I thought it was really entertaining, but
yeah, I think that's the piece, right? That it just basically inflamed just stereotypes and the stereotypical idea of Mexico and basically the Caribbean, Latin America.
I know. Really, when you were reading this book, you were so heated about this book.
I was.
And I was the opposite. So I really had to sit with this one to think about it. Again, as an entertainment piece, really well done, in my opinion. From a historical fiction standpoint and getting information out to people, not great.
Yeah.
To say the least.
I think my issue, and we were talking about this in relation to 419, and I took issue with authors who are distant from the crisis context, trying to, assume responsibility in, discussing or like talking about the issue that's there, or educating, I guess, for what they believe that they're doing. I mean, we've talked about this many times. It's hard to sort of gauge when it's born out of this, when it's exploitative. It's hard to gauge when what they're doing is just an exploitative thing that they know what will sell. They know how to write it, and so they write it. It's hard to gauge that. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily... I really do think that this author has the intentions.
Yeah. I don't think she did it to exploit on purpose.
It's hard to know, though, right? It's really hard to know when the end goal is to write a book that's going to sell.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really hard to know what drives people to write what they write.
Yeah.
It is possible that she thinks that this is going to sell and this is going to get to a large demographic of readers who are going to be well informed about what's going on there. I think my issue with it is that it exists within a sort of genealogy of thinking and writing about distant parts of the world in this way, like pieces to be consumed. And this literature feeds into that.
Okay. So, yeah. So I think that it's interesting. And the fact that this book, I have two more, again, issues with it on the same line of, questioning. I really don't think that I don't know. And if you're listening, please let us know if this was your, I don't think you'd ever admit it if it was, but I don't personally think that you were using this story to enhance your career, to make more money.
Are you talking to the author?
Yes, because I like to assume the best out of people for the most part. However, what I did when I started to do research on the fact that like 6-figure advances were paid for this book to potentially a Mexican counterpart author who might write something similar, wouldn't even get a quarter of that. That kind of like gave me a little bit of flags. And again, I'm not dissing this author. I'm just challenging the society that we live in, which is the exact same thing that you just kind of were picking at, right? Like, I'm challenging the fact that this white woman, yes, she has a little bit of Puerto Rican in her, but she's Mexican, okay? She is not Mexican. Okay. She has a little bit of Puerto Rican. She's not Mexican in this. She gets a lot of flack for this, for not being Mexican and writing this story. But, of those millions of dollars, have they been put back to the Mexican community? I would love to know if there was any of that money that was made that was put back into the community. Because to me, if you're using this, as you say in your author's note, to really bring light to the problems that are existing, that you should be following through on that.
Oh, and how would you respond if she did actually invest the money in communities for educational purposes?
Then my view on that would stand that I really don't think she was exploiting this culture. I don't think that she was. I think her intentions are pure. That she was really trying to bring light to what is going on in the U.S. Yeah. Whether or not she used violence and really made this like a Narcos documentary, that's something different. Maybe that she felt that was the only way that she could really impact people, because, like, again, certain writing styles, certain writing capabilities, maybe that was her way of being impactful and trying to make a statement. She didn't think about the consequences or the fact that she was playing on stereotypes. I'm sure there are interviews that I could look up on YouTube where she's been asked this form of questioning before, because we are not the first people who have this criticism.
Yeah, no, we're not. Good points. I don't think, investing the wealth into, developing communities or education would change my view of whether or not she incidentally or unwittingly exploited a situation, just because question of exploitation is so nuanced. it's hard to actually say how it manifests in somebody's work or somebody's decision to write something. It's hard to say because there's so many factors at play in why people choose to write the stories that they do. And I don't think it's just black and white. I don't think it's simple.
Did you read the author's note?
I did not. I never got the chance to. I basically, I feel like I kind of can guess what it says. It doesn't really change. My problem is not that there are more capable, so the reason why she would get such a hefty advance anyway is just because she's a prolific writer. She has quite the resume. Like, it's not just about her whiteness or her identity, because the pressures, right, to write good books and publish them are real, especially when it's your line of work. I think racialized authors are capable of exploiting situations. So it's not just about the identity of the author.
Okay, but do you think that if this author was Mexican,
I think that person is still capable of exploiting it?
That's not the question. I was going to say it's okay. If this author was Mexican, would you have less of a commentary on the stereotypes?
No, absolutely not.
You would still have the same.
If this author was Mexican and produced exactly like the American Dirt as it is, same exact comment. Same exact comment. Because I read a novel by a Nigerian author set in somewhere close to Nigeria, in an unnamed country. I can't remember his name now, but it just played on all of the stereotypes. And these conversations, the way that authors write, the way that author, I felt, was feeding into ideas that they probably knew would sell. And I don't think a person's identity precludes them from making the same exact decisions, right? I think that the author who wrote American Dirt might have blind spots based on the fact that she's not part of that society. She's not immersed in that society, and she's distant from the crisis. So if she did think that she was doing something really, advancing the conversation, something educational, she may not have realized how she was missing the mark entirely. But I think that authors, like people who are from that society that produce the same work, may actually know even more so and still produce it. Okay. And I do think people are capable of doing it. So it's not about the identity. I think it's just the pressures of the publishing industry. And for racialized authors, it's different from white authors, because racialized authors basically are like called to write. Like, nobody cares about a racialized author writing a fantasy novel about a white author. Like, nobody's going to pick that up, right? So that's the way that the industry is really racist. They really care more about the racialized author writing about their experiences, writing about where they come from and the suffering of their people. So you'll see African-American authors writing about African-American stories. That's what will sell. So in that, white people have a lot more flexibility in what they can write. Racialized authors don't have that same flexibility.
That's really unfair.
It is unfair. So that's where I think the conversation about our society and how messed up it is comes to play.
Yeah.
But I think that the pressures of the publishing industry are the same, and that authors, to sell, kind of need to write certain stories. And a lot of times I feel like they may know what sells. Good for me is exactly how I felt after reading Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. Will I feel the same way today? I have no idea. But right at the end, when Okonkwo...
Don't ruin it for me.
Oh...
Don't spoil it for me.
How? Like, how is this even, like, this book
existed for like years. I won't read it.
Okay.
It's okay.
So, okay. So, spoiler alert if you haven't already read Things Fall Apart. But, like, the main character, Okonkwo, commits suicide right at the end. And for me, that was just... I was headed to work and I started bawling. But, like, I can't even, I haven't reread the book. That's number one. Honestly, in that moment, just as a reader and not as like a a lit, student or whatever. Just as a reader, everything for me was like, I can't even articulate my thoughts because I started thinking of my dad, right? Because the book is it's about the colonization of the Igbo people of Nigeria, right? So before then, it wasn't Nigeria, so it was just the Igbos. So like I started thinking of my dad. I started thinking of like just my family, and like I pictured my dad as Okonkwo, right? And Okonkwo's character is so vivid, so real, and like you could substitute for me any like patriarch, Igbo patriarch, a very like hyper masculine figure for him, and it would be absolutely real, like authentic, an authentic portrayal.
Right.
So I just saw my dad, and I thought of my dad, and I remember just bawling my eyes out and thinking, this is how they got us. Like it's like the second book that did that for me is like The Fisherman, and The Fisherman is a very dark Gothic story set in Nigeria.
Okay.
And not in the classic Gothic. This is post-colonial Gothic. So it's very much more like looking at like a specific context, in Nigeria, and things that unravel based on the ramblings of a lunatic, basically.
Okay.
Now, I could not stop crying for days after reading that book. It was like, it shook me to my core. For me, a book, when I feel has just revealed something about the human experience, is for me like a fantastic book.
Right. So my question to you, because you shared all this with the hopes that you're going to find a book that makes you feel that way. No, you don't need to laugh. The two, like, the thing that kind of came across was that both of these books took place in Nigeria, right?
Yeah.
The setting was in Nigeria because it's, obviously
it's so
like,
funny.
It's part of your culture.
Yeah.
It is your culture.
Right.
Part of it is your culture, right? Like, I say right because I don't know Canada.
Right. No, for sure.
So do you think that that's the reason, or do you think it's just writing the story like
no? I felt like that after East of Eden, not to the same degree, and I truly believe it's just because I listened to it, as opposed to read it.
Okay.
And like I felt like that after Great Gatsby.
Okay.
I don't remember The Great Gatsby, but I did have the same.
I love The Great Gatsby. It's a great book.
Yeah. No, they're definitely not. But of course, like, and The Fisherman, I didn't feel was close to home, though. Of course, Things Fall Apart was.
You're gonna find one that you like, and you can't approach every single book that it's going to be the next East of Eden.
Maybe there are readers who are chasing that high, and that's why
they are
like,
and that's okay.
Okay.
But you also have to set your expectations that it might not be that right.
The thing is, it's so in this process of reading, for this book club, and having discussion, I think I'm just like, I could read something that's mind blowing and just not be in the mood, and it wouldn't sit with me, and I'm wondering how much of that is just a mood and expectation. I'm expecting something grander. I've maybe been really impressed by a specific book that set my expectation really high, and I'm just not hitting.
Right.
I'm not getting that dopamine fix from any of these books, really. So it's just a sort of mediocre, okay place, and I'm ready to like get a really, really high lit fic right now. I feel like maybe this is gonna be it for me. That's kind of
I get it. Okay, listen.
All right. Okay. Sorry. Bye.
Bye.